You're listening to the Low Pressure Podcast, the podcast for skiers.
Presented by CMH Heli-Skiing and Peak Performance.
Right on, dude.
Yeah.
Thanks for your patience. I was telling Jordy last week I'm a little rusty, and I still am.
Yeah.
I used to be, but I still am too.
You get too used to doing everything remote, I guess.
Oh, yeah, man. The Zoom calls. I did one the other day. I'm so happy to be doing these in person again.
Yeah, it's way easier.
Yeah,
Having a conversation in real life instead of through a screen.
Oh, man.
I think we're all pretty burnt out on it. It's like,
yeah. Do you have a lot of that in the last...
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of not super often, but that's the only way I've been talking with like a lot of the brands I work with and stuff is all through Zoom. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's just the current way still. So,
You know, I've done a lot. I had to do a lot of Zoom stuff, but I always be like, well, let's hop on a Zoom call. And it always sounds so goofy.
yeah.
But it's, you know, what it is. And like people are into it, I guess, because their mindset is like, okay, I have to do this,
Yeah.
rather than like, you know, no.
Yeah, and it's quick. I guess, like, you know, instead of having to actually physically go somewhere, you can just log on. Takes an hour. Done.
True.
There's some upsides.
Did you
But
hear about that guy that got fired from his job for beating off on one of his meetings and just his camera was on?
just forgot.
Yeah, he's
Or
probably,
was he leave it on because he was a creep?
I know. I
People
think he was
see.
like, I think he just forgot, or like he was during. Although, yeah, creep. I think it was during. I think it was during like a meeting.
Oh, yeah.
His camera was on, and like he's probably just been working, beating off like 3-4 times a day, sitting at his desk. Doing,
I did hear some people were doing 2 jobs at once, right? And they would like mute themselves and whatever. It'd be like juggling 2 Zoom calls at the same time and just have like 2 full paying roles at 2 different companies.
I've actually heard that like with IT guys, that a couple things I was doing because I was looking into maybe getting some like help for like some editing and some back end stuff, and you can hire like virtual assistants.
Yeah.
So like people in the Philippines or, you know, some, you know, I'm not gonna say third world country, but like a country that has a lower pay rate, I guess, for the lack of a better term. So anyways, like they've got these places where you can go and find these virtual assistants. And I was looking into it, and there's a bunch of stories about like dudes in IT or like the IT side of a business that their people are just so hurting for IT people that he'll like sign up for like 10 jobs.
Yeah.
And then
Just triage whatever's going on.
yeah, dude, he'll have like sign up for like 8 or 10 jobs in a year, and then will pass all that work on to a guy that he pays in like the Philippines for like a smaller rate.
Oh, yeah.
And then when like he said something like usually takes like 2 or 3 months for the company to realize that he's just a shitty employee.
But
already by then he's
Yeah.
been made like
Yeah.
30 grand, right? And you do
Yeah.
that like 10 times in a year. I'm like, that's brilliant, but
just
evil.
work in the system. Yeah.
That's some evil genius shit right there, you know?
yeah. People always take advantage, so it's kind of
Yeah,
humans can be
it's just a
kinda-
matter of like your level of
your moral
morality.
compass,
yeah,
yeah.
your
If it's broken enough, Zoom calls can be a pretty good way to exploit people, I guess.
right. And then like, have you ever seen the people that have been like putting the green screens behind them
No.
or putting on the fake screen behind them, and they're like on a roller coaster? Or I saw one the other day that was like at the ball game.
Oh,
He
yeah.
was at a football game, and he had a big green screen, and he was sitting. And they showed like the Zoom screen, and people are like, "What's going on?" He's sitting there eating a hot dog. It looks like he's in his office. I wanted to set up a screen here, but just like record a video of like the table
Yeah.
and me walking into the screen and being like, or like grabbing something.
Oh, yeah.
Or like just naturally walking into the screen, grabbing something, and then leaving. Like in behind me while I'm already sitting there to see
Trip
if
people out.
just trip people out, right? But I don't know. That's like the project that I don't have time for.
Yeah.
Although it's kind of funny to talk about.
Yeah. Gotta wait for a rainier day than today.
Yeah,
somehow.
yeah, right. So what's going on with you, man? We saw each other a couple weeks ago at the Protect Our Winters thing, and
Yeah. So, well, since then, that was kind of like the end of my summer, basically. And I had surgery like 2 weeks ago.
oh
So I
yeah, for
had,
your arm. Mhm.
Yeah, I had.
Let's see.
Yeah, I got like just a ton of staples and stuff in there still.
Can I touch one?
Yeah, it's kind of.
Oh, that's gnarly.
weird. And this side too. So I had like.
Both sides.
Yeah, I had. This is my 3rd surgery on the arm from that accident that happened in March of 2020, like
Yeah.
right before the whole world stopped, basically. Like the week before that, I had that accident, and
Yeah. Are you tired of talking about it yet?
It comes up sometimes, but
Yeah.
I haven't really been seeing a ton of people, right? Everyone's kind of been in their little bubble, so.
Yeah. I mean, like with the media storm, like, so now you've had a bit of time to like reflect on it. It's kind of mellowed out a little bit. You know, I remember when it first happened, I was like, hey man, if you want to talk about it on the podcast, let me know.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I'm not going to hassle him. Like part of
It's kind of like people think that I'm really sensitive about it, but it's fine to talk about. It doesn't really
I honestly wasn't
send me
thinking
for a
that
tailspin. So.
I wasn't thinking to be too sensitive about it. I just wouldn't want to like be one more thing, like, you know what I mean?
Beating
Like
the dead horse a little bit.
Yeah, right. Like, you know, I consider you to be a friend, and that's kind of where my line for the podcast and like life is kind of weird.
Yeah.
Is like from a journalist point of view, or like a Cedar's chewing a bone. I'm gonna take that away from her in a second. But like from like a media outlet's point of view, I'm like, I should have been on you. Hey, let's do this interview. I want to get it first, all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I'm like, man, that guy just had a big deal, and he's gonna have a bunch of other people like wanting something from him, right? So give me a second.
Yeah.
Give me that.
Yeah, we get the. Sorry.
No, leave it.
She's like, what? Oh. The sad face.
Hey, leave it. But you know what I mean? Like, the person in me is like, man, like he's gonna have all these people that are gonna want something from you. You know what I mean? Like that's what they want from you. Like I don't want to like, I don't really want anything from you. Like I want you to come on the show. I want to have a conversation, but I don't necessarily want to use you as a way to like boost numbers or anything like that. You know?
But it's something that like I don't mind talking about because it was something that I feel like needs to be shared in the ski industry. It's not really like the kind of an accident you want to keep quiet. It's not the kind of event you want to, keep people from hearing about because it affects anyone who goes into the backcountry, right? And
yeah,
so, chances are you might know somebody or one of your ski partners or secondary group of people someone has this transceiver probably, right? And so
yeah. So for those of you that don't know, like there's a lot of people that listen to this do know, but there's going to be a handful that don't. Can you summarize kind of what happened?
So Cole's notes, I guess. Yeah. So I had, I was on a film shoot with TGR, and it was me and Ian McIntosh, Christina Lustenberger, Sam Smoothie, and our film crew, 3 other people there as well. And we were skiing kind of up near Pemberton. And we had skied this big face in the morning. We all kind of skied our lines, and it was middle of the day, which anyone who does any like winter ski filming knows middle of the day is a little tougher to shoot because typically stuff that's in the light midday isn't the best snow quality. It's usually too south facing, but this stuff was actually quite kind of north facing, and it was getting kind of top lit. And there was some little pillows, this kind of little cool pillow area. I was skiing these pillows, did 2 laps through there. In the second lap, there was one pillow that was just ready to go. It was quite stable that day, but this one pillow just was clinging on for dear life. And
It's cracked off.
It cracked off, and I couldn't see it from where I was skiing. I was kind of on this ridge, and it was kind of underneath the ridge where it happened. And so it started rolling down the hill and breaking apart.
Did you like land on it and then it broke off?
No, just like a little bit of like, there was super light sloughing that day, like very, very light snow.
So it was
it was like, it just needed like the wrong wind to hit it. Right? It was ready to go.
Yeah.
You can see that there's a video of it on YouTube and stuff, but yeah, you can see the pillow breaks underneath me, and then I'm skiing down these pillows, and I kind of go to cut across through what I thought would be like just a light little slough, and it was like full of these icy blocks, and they redirected me into the tree. I got my arm up, fortunately, and I ended up like kind of punching myself in the chest and shattered my arm, and had some like internal trauma. Bruised my heart and stuff, like just from punching myself in the chest, and my face was all swollen. Like I definitely got kind of beat up, but then I got buried after, like, because it was all soft, like kind of tree well type terrain, like a bit of a terrain trap where it kind of flattened out near the bottom of the lake.
Mm-hmm.
And
Did you get like sloughed down to the bottom sort of thing?
I mean, I don't think I made it very far past the trees, maybe 20, 30 feet past the trees before I stopped, and then it was just like the remaining blocks of snow that were kind of trailing down filled in over top of me, and so I was buried like 1.5 meters.
Ooh.
And yeah, I was wearing the Pieps DSP Transceiver, which is like super common transceiver. It's a lot of people have liked it over the years. It's pretty fast and stuff, but it's got a really problematic on-off switch, and it's kind of this mechanical like super basic mechanical function of this thing that's, you know, quite a high-tech piece of equipment. Like avalanche transceivers they're all pretty good in this day and age. They're all pretty fast, and you know, we're lucky to have that technology in such a simple package, but it's the on-off switch mechanism, like the mechanical function of the way that thing turns on and off is flawed. And so
it's the most important part.
Yeah,
right?
so the transceiver, it turned off, completely off.
Like while I
was buried,
Now,
like at some point. And
just to play devil's advocate, was there a possibility that you didn't turn it on?
No, because we had like 6 other people that were there that day that corroborated, like, for sure we did a
Everybody did their
check.
tests
And it's,
in the morning.
you know, standard for us to do every time.
Yeah.
Like, it's part of the day. Like as soon as everyone's starting their sleds, the last thing we do every time is always
you don't leave the parking lot.
transceiver check.
Yeah, as you leave the parking lot.
And, you
right?
know, like having 6 other people all very confident that we did a check that day, and you know, 2 of them are guides. Like Lucy's a guide, and Ian just became a ski guide. Like this is something that we take really seriously.
Did you know, like I said, just on that same devil's advocate, like was that something that you questioned yourself after the fact? No,
not at all. No, because it was we knew for sure it was on, right? And like in the immediate aftermath, like, you know, as soon as I was dug out, like fortunately, so to continue the story, fortunately those guys found me by some, you know, universal guided probe strike that was like the second attempt from one of our cinematographers, Ben Dan, hit me like second try or something. And they were about to do like a pretty systematic grid search, which is like how, like, that's like body recovery style searching, right? Like you're not hopefully looking for a live victim in that way, but that was kind of where they were at with no signal. And it was a relatively small search area because it wasn't like an avalanche in your typical sense of the way you think of like a weak layer in a snowpack and a big slide path. Everything, this was like a trundling block in a bit of a terrain trap. So it was kind of a small area.
which is fortunate.
But it was deep enough that, like, you know, it could have been a lot longer before they found me. And so it was definitely...
You could have been underneath one of those big blocks too, you know?
Yeah, totally. So it was, a meter and a half. They got me out of there under 6 minutes, which is like pretty amazing for no signal. And they were all fortunately super close, and like, you know, it was a flat lake nearby that they were on, so it was easy to get me down to somewhere I could get picked up from a helicopter. And it was a sunny day. It was middle of the day. There was no wind, and there was a lot of things going for us. But at the end of the day, like, the big takeaway from that was, you know, like, it was a bit of a weird, unlucky circumstance for me to get buried in that way. I think, like, you ski enough pillows and chances are at some point you might end up in a weird hole, or like, they're pretty complicated terrain, right? Like, the way pillows form, they're all kind of little cornices. Like, every single pillow is its own micro cornice, and then there's usually holes, and it's weird terrain to be in, but, you know, a lot of people love it. It's really fun. And you do it enough, and maybe you might break one, and maybe you might break one in the wrong way, and that's what happened. But the big takeaway for us was definitely that the transceiver that failed. And then looking into it further, there was, you know, an incident in 2017 here in Whistler, where there was a fatality with that transceiver, and same thing, the group was confident that the transceiver was on, and the victim was found like 4 hours later. And it was like dog team and the whole, everyone had to come out to locate the victim, because it was a true real avalanche, like a slide path and everything. And so, and then there's other people have all these stories too of just getting back to the car and their transceiver was off, right? And they're like, whoa, no way, how does that? I swear we did a check. And everyone's like, no, we did a check. And then you chalk it up to user error or something, right? And you kind of forget about it. And now there's like hundreds and hundreds of these stories, and a lot of them are benign, you know, like a lot of transceivers turned off in kind of a way that didn't really affect anyone's livelihood, but it just takes one. And
so what was the process then after, like, obviously you wrote your story and you came out with it? Was it kind of a, hey guys, let's coordinate on this instead? Was it just you one day? I doubt it was, but it was just you one day writing a post like, I need to talk about this.
No.
Or did you like get together with everyone? Did you talk to Black Diamond first before you put it out?
Yeah, we totally did.
They knew it was coming.
That's the first place we went, right? Like, it's they own that company. And so we basically like started by trying to make sure that the proper channels were followed for this, right? Like, hey, you guys have a product that failed. Like, here's an event where we proved it doesn't work. And we told them our issue with it, and, you know, they took us seriously at first. I would say they definitely, you know, heard us out. We talked to them quite a few times. Keep in mind too, this was weird timing. It was like March 9th was when I got hurt, and I think the world shut down the next week, right? Like,
Yeah.
I got out of the hospital like 4 days later, and it was kind of like COVID was in BC all of a sudden, and it started.
It's
to
like
be
a
the whole
real
thing.
28 days or whatever, where you
Yeah.
wake up and the world's you
Yeah.
come out of the hospital like, what's going on?
It was a trip, and it was like the end of everyone's season. Was it like, I had a season-ending injury on like the last day of the year, basically.
Yeah.
So they were a little bit limited with access to the office and doing testing and stuff at first, which fair enough. Like, but keep in mind, this is still winter of 2020
Yeah.
that we're telling them this stuff. And so months go by, and we're kind of in communication with them a little bit back and forth, and they're trying to do some testing and stuff. And obviously I send them the device, which UPS lost. And like, I had the tracking information, and it made it to Salt Lake and was never delivered there. And so there's, like, you can't really control that type of thing. But I also did send them a whole bunch of people that I know had that device, right? So I sent them basically everyone I could gather one from. I sent them all those as well, and they did testing on a bunch of those, and a bunch of ones that were returned for warranty reasons, like, aside from physical damage, like stuff like LCD dead pixels or like whatever. So they ran a bunch of testing, and it was all within like the threshold of passing the test. And then so we started looking into like the document, basically, that there's the ETSI, which is
what's
like,
that?
it's like European Telecommunications. I can't remember exactly what it stands for, Standards Institution or something. But they basically oversee the document that has to pass these devices, right? So before you can just sell an avalanche transceiver,
It's got to go through
in the world, like there's a set of guidelines it's got to meet, and it's a huge document full of like, there's all kinds of things about UV resistance and water resistance and impact stuff and signal strength stuff and battery life, tons of stuff like that. And then there's like 2 sentences basically on the on-off switch. It's like, it must exist, and it must be easy to use, and you must be able to easily see that it's on or off, kind of thing.
Yeah. But
And so
nothing about like the functionality of it.
No,
Like,
it says it's supposed to like
lock out.
Yeah,
and
it's
stuff.
like on-off switch that is supposed to like lock into on or off or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's open to interpretation, and it's up to each brand to design, the best mousetrap that they think they can come up with. And all these different transceivers like have different switches. If you look at, like a BCA versus a Mammut versus a Nordvox they all have a slightly different way of doing things, and they all work together on like the signal, obviously, but the interface is different on all of them. And that's like kind of the only basic difference between a lot of these is the mechanical design of it.
Yeah.
The basic on-off switch is like
the
kind of the
the
thing you
cover,
have
the
to design.
casing, and
And the flaw with this one is that it's a depression like that you got to push on to unlock the on-off switch, and it's on the face of the device. So if you can imagine, you have to push this thing, and it's like, thousandths of an inch that it needs to go in. It's a pretty low amount of pressure. For sure, it like locks when you just are playing with it, but as soon as you put it into the case, just having it against your ribs or whatever, suddenly there's a little bit of pressure, like in that neoprene sleeve that it comes with,
in the harness, and it can just,
and all it takes is like you glide your elbow wrong or something, right? And so like,
or you get tossed around in an avalanche.
Yeah, like mine most likely turned off like from impacting the tree, but the transceiver that I had had no damage, no visible damage, still worked, like still locked on and off, still like according to their guidelines would still be like good for field use,
Yeah.
And it had failed. And same with a bunch of these other devices, and even brand new ones were able to do that, right? Like you put it in the harness, and suddenly it's easy to just move that thing because there's just like that little bit of pressure, and it's an oversight, right? Like it's something that a company like that needs to admit is wrong, and they've kind of done that eventually, but not until like the backlash, basically, right? Like we told them that it was going to be in the film, like the film segment was going to come out in September, and we were trying to work with them to do the right thing. They could have been kind of like the heroes, right? Like they could have been like, hey, like this device from this brand that we acquired has this flaw, even though like we can get it past all the tests, we see like some holes in the testing, right? Like, they could have been kind of the heroes and decided to recall this thing on their own. Maybe
Could have been a feel-good story, right?
And yeah, like pushed for higher standards.
Yeah.
Like,
Here's
like,
something
hey,
that came up that was unforeseen.
Yeah.
We're going to take care of this so that our community is safer moving forward, which, would have cost them some money for
Definitely.
returns, right? Which is probably the reasons they ended up responding the way they did, but also
it's a business.
How many do you think they would have sold once they got the new ones out and then turn it into a campaign? Do you know what I mean? That's my view on it.
Yeah,
But
I think they had probably invested pretty heavily, and the molds for that thing were paid off. This is like a design from 8 or 9 years ago now or something.
Mm-hmm.
So they probably paid the molds off, and it was the price point transceiver at this point. Like, they had, the one I had was the Pro model, which I think was phased out in order to get these new ones out. They've got like an updated design where the switch is a bit different now, and the device is pretty similar, but the switch is different, and it just makes you think, like, well, why do you have a different switch on it now?
Oh, was that so? They had already changed it, and then it was like, I wonder if it was just kind of a thought about, okay, this is how much it's going to end up costing us. We've already changed it out. You know what I mean? Let's just try and sweep it under the rug.
I think you can speculate, and it's like you know that for sure. It's a publicly traded company, like above Black Diamond is Claris, and they're definitely like, there's shareholders to answer to. And if this thing passes the test, I think that was the mentality of the people who are high up there. It's like, if this thing passes the tests, like, it's not our problem to recall this. It passes.
Do you know what happened to that stock price?
I don't know. Yeah, I haven't paid attention, but I don't think it's like made a significant impact on their stock. But I do know for sure a lot of people who are, skiers and climbers and stuff, who are avoiding buying gear from that brand, like, because of this, right? It taints their image, and there's a lot of good people that work at that company. A bunch of them have left, or there's a lot of people in disagreement with what's happened there, and I think it comes from pretty high up. That they just wanted to get past this thing, like, it was a speed bump for them, and that was kind of it. And I think at the end of the day, they ended up doing a voluntary recall of the sleeve, like the neoprene sleeve that it comes with, the harness that it comes with, which is their way of basically admitting guilt without actually doing really anything about it. Because now it's like on the user to seek out a replacement. Like, they have this like plastic box now that will go in instead, where once it's in the box, it can only be in send. So you can't even store it in there. Like, when you take it off at the end of the day, you got to like have it separate from the box, because it doesn't even fit in there. And like, they've basically retrofitted the safety device that's supposed to save your life, right? And at the end of the day, like, in my opinion, no one should be using that thing. Like, and I won't ski with you if you got that thing. Like, you're not coming in with me in the backcountry. And I think that there's a lot of people that are probably in that boat. There's so many better devices than that one, and it's proven to fail. So why use it?
Right.
And I think people are upset because, like, they bought this thing recently, like, for their wife for a Christmas present or whatever, and it's like $400 thing, and then suddenly they find out that it's flawed, and then there was a whole debacle of like trying to get it replaced. Like, they were so inconsistent with messaging and stuff all through this. Like, people have been getting new devices or being asked to pay some to get a new device or whatever. There's been all kinds of different weird inconsistencies with it, right? So it's kind of, I think they're trying to just do damage control and not actually like do everything but recall the device.
Which in this day and age isn't the right way, in my opinion, to do it, right? You got to own up to yours. If you quickly own up to what was wrong, even if you didn't, even it wasn't as severe or something like that, right? Like, just in like, there's like the cancel culture where this isn't quite that, because this is a legitimately serious issue. Yeah,
it's a safety device, right? Like, its only job is really to stay on in an avalanche if you're buried, or to be able to find someone who's buried, right? And like, I never had an issue with it because I had never been buried, and I'd never actually had to use it for real. Like, I've only used it just in practice a lot, and it worked always in practice.
When it actually needed to work, it didn't.
It was the only time it was supposed to work for me, right? It didn't, so.
Crazy, because like, if they had owned up to it, said, hey, we're going to do our best to fix it, put out a press release, hey, this happened, like, that sucks, like, this is something we didn't foresee, blah, 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 and they went and took those right steps, we'd be having a very different conversation right now.
But they basically doubled down and they passed the blame a little bit, right, to the standards. Like, it does pass the test, right? Even the device that I had, specifically that one, after it had failed, it still passes.
Now back to that, like, devil's advocate stuff, did you get any, like, blowback or any people lashing out or giving you shit for it? Like, just saying, oh, maybe you didn't turn it on, or like, did you get any like negative,
Not really,
no negative
like,
feedback?
it's, he said, she said, right? But like, you think 6 of us that day, or 7, including me, are all gonna say that it was on just to like try and save face or something,
Right.
It was on, and whether or not it was turned off like previous to the accident, like it could have, for all we know, turned off when I was skinning up. Like I could have been touring and just like hit it wrong with my elbow.
Right.
We don't know. And like now that we've been able to like replicate it failing, it seems, and a lot of people have that happen too, where they're out touring and it just turned off and they didn't know why. And but the thing with this device is like they've got these branded outerwear pockets and stuff too, right? Like the Pieps pocket that they have in these outerwears, and it's like you can't actually put that device in that pocket. Like the only way that it's safe to use is if you have this retrofit case.
Yeah.
And I know they don't have as many of those cases out in the wild as they do transceivers.
Right.
And I think that, they did kind of what they were expected to as far as like trying to get the message out. I think if you had bought one from like a box store and you were on the email list, whatever, for like you got an email maybe that was like from REI, say, that said that like, hey, we saw you bought this device. Like, please note you should look into this voluntary recall. But that's kind of it. That's what's happened, right? And so there's a lot of people who don't know about it, and a lot of people still have that thing. And
so if you have a black diamond Pieps, is that what it was?
well, it's the Pieps DSP model.
So if you're listening,
it's kind of that yellow and green one now. There's some gray and green ones. Yeah. And the current ones, like all the black diamond branded ones, they're a different upgraded switch.
Yeah.
As of, I can't remember what year they came out, last year maybe, or 2 years ago. But
so if you're listening and you think you have one, go check it out. Where can they go find out if that's the one or not?
I mean, you can look, just type it in, honestly.
Yeah.
Type in like,
we'll put a
Pieps
link up.
DSP into Google and see what comes up.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of good things that come up.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunate. Well, obviously you've got to get a new transceiver now.
Yeah, I've been working with Mammut since.
Have you?
Yeah, they seem to like the way that I handled the whole, like everyone who was there that day ended up basically getting new Mammut transceivers from those guys, and they were happy to support us, and glad that we're like, pushing for the safety of the community. Because like I didn't want to be kind of like sitting here slandering a brand, and that's not the goal, right? Like,
yeah.
The goal is to spread the knowledge of like this specific device has a specific mechanism that fails on it. We've seen it happen in person. It happened to me, and I'm lucky to be here to be able to tell people. So it's like,
and you gave them every opportunity too, right?
Yeah, they had 6 months to kind of like figure out how to spin it and be kind of like the heroes. Like I said, they could have been, proactively talking to the people who are making these things pass this test, and said like, hey, like this thing passes, but we can poke a hole in this standard, right? Like this isn't good enough. Like the standards need to be slightly higher, because they're pretty high for all the other aspects.
Did you go to the standards organization as well? I'm sure they're well aware of it.
I think, well, because there's an open class action, which I'm not involved with or anything, but there's an open class action in BC, and then there's like, I think like between all the legal, I don't know how it's all happening, but between all the legal workings, I think that the ETSI, I think they're like at fault for this 2017 incident or they're named at fault in the lawsuit or whatever. I don't know. There's a lot going on legally I'm not involved with, but it's kind of something I don't really want to be involved with at all. I just want people to know, like, if you've got this transceiver, don't use it, basically. Or like at the very bare minimum, like get this plastic case and make sure you put it in the correct case. But like,
yeah,
that's like, I think a band-aid, right? Like just buy a device that's trustworthy. And, I had to learn the hard way, but a lot of people hopefully can learn the easy way that like, hey, I've got this thing, maybe I should upgrade.
So how have you been doing, like, mentally, personally, since that happened? Like, there's a lot of things to contemplate, right? Like you were buried. Like, can I ask you what was going through your head?
Yeah, well, I was pretty lucky that I was with like the crew that I was with that day, because there was 6 people all watching me pretty closely. Like I was the only one actually skiing that little pillow zone. It was kind of like a lunch break for those guys. They were content with like hanging for a little bit. So it was, I knew like when I was under there that it was kind of all hands on deck, and they were all close to me, and there was like, should have really been nothing impeding the recovery. Like as far as like getting to a victim who's buried, like it was as good as it could have been. So I had the peace of mind under there knowing like they're coming, right?
Man, like was it like was there a panic moment where you're like, Okay,
Yeah,
calm down. Like we had to like talk.
I mean, at
yourself through
first
it,
when
or-
you can't breathe under there, for sure.
Ooh.
But
Did you have an air pocket or anything?
no, nothing. But like, and my arm was shattered, but I was in shock. I think like I can't really remember thinking about my arm when I was actually buried, until like I was able to breathe when they finally got my face out and my arm was underneath me. I was like upside down, head first, kind of. And once I could breathe, then it was all about the arm thing. But before then, it was just like I can't breathe. And
Did you like black out?
I was very close. I think like by the end I was for sure fading, because I remember right before I got hit by the probe, that's like when it started to like panic again, because I kind of knew that like reality sets in. I was like getting a little bit content, kind of like tired.
Oh no, like okay,
sleepy.
this is I'm
I was
close my
getting
eyes for a
just
minute.
sleepy basically, which is kind of surreal. It's hard to explain, but I had to be really calm, because as soon as you try and breathe, you can't. But if you try and just take the slowest possible breath you could imagine, like the gentlest, slowest breath you could imagine, and then breathe out the same way, like I was able to pull just like a tiny bit through just the snowpack around. So that was kind of what kept me going for the 5 minutes or whatever. And
Did it feel like an eternity? Like
yeah, kind of. I don't know. It's so hard to explain. Like yes and no at the same time.
yeah.
It was a weird experience, and it's not something I wish on anyone. Obviously, it's pretty grim. And knowing that like how comfortable I started to get all of a sudden, just tired and like it's like you're dying. That's what dying feels like, and it's not a nice place. And then when I got hit with the probe, that was like a major like re-alert the senses and like try and breathe again and can't, and know that they're close. So it's almost like,
Do you almost like start to panic? Be like, okay, let's go. Like,
Yeah.
Now you're here. Now I'm like you
Yeah.
get another blast of adrenaline probably,
Totally.
and you're like, let's.
yeah,
do
and
this.
you like start to realize. And I think by that point it had been about 5 minutes, and so like the shock about the arm started to wear off a little bit too, and because my wrist was like 2 inches back from where it was supposed to be. It was like, rubberized. And then I had like all this chest trauma, and like I was spitting up blood and stuff because I had some bleeding inside my lungs and everything, and it was like pretty grim. And as soon as I could breathe, once they got to me and I could breathe, then it was like major pain started to hit, because the shock had kind of worn off, and then I was super cold too. Like I mean, you're in like an icy
You're
box,
packed
right?
in ice, yeah, right.
Yeah, and it was like a pretty nice day. Like it wasn't a super cold day, it was like kind of a nice like pleasant -7, and we were like in the sun and no wind, and we had tons of down jackets and stuff, and I had basically everyone's jackets piled on top of me and stuff, and I was still just freezing cold, like shivering and in the sun, from the shock, I guess. And yeah, it's crazy kind of what the cold does to you. But
Holy man.
yeah, it was relieving to get the helicopter ride for sure.
And and the fact that you said that's the group of people in the city. Like it just was. If that's gonna happen, that's the situation you want to be in.
Well, I can
with
only
those
imagine
people.
all the other times that I've been just like kind of party shredding through some pillows or whatever with some friends who maybe are a bit less experienced than the people I was with, and like had I been at the back of the group and broken a pillow and got stuffed into a hole, and my friends were downhill a little bit, and they, at the bottom of the pillow field, they look up and I'm not there, and they're like, what happened? And then they got to transition and try and hike up, and there's no signal. Like,
Yeah, it's gonna take a lot more than 5 minutes.
and then like a helicopter can't just land nicely because you're like in the woods, like we had like a big flat lake for them to come to. Like there was just so many things that kind of did go our way.
There's so many things that went right.
Yeah,
even though
despite
some
the
went wrong.
the equipment failure.
Oof, jeez, man. Like, have you? Now, another question I have too is like with things like that, with like PTSD and things. Have you been like talking to like a therapist or like a counselor or anything like that to kind of?
Not really. No, like I've just been pretty open about it with people, and like especially like with my girlfriend and stuff and close friends, and yeah, I feel pretty good, but it's definitely like kind of brought back up some of those feelings. Like last spring we were at Micah Heli, and it was like a little bit of a warmer day, and they're famous for the pillows. Like the terrain there is just incredible, and it had gotten a bit warm, and this is like a little bit early in the season for a warming like we had, I guess, kind of where like some of the lower snowpack starts to go a little isothermic, and it's still like pretty cold out, but like it hasn't had as much of an overnight freeze or something, and I broke a pillow off just skiing, like kind of some of the smaller pillows that they have there.
Yeah.
And I broke a pillow off, and it propagated in like the whole little pillow face, which is like just a small little film face, not a huge slope or anything, but it was big enough that like suddenly we were like the whole group was just like, I guess we're not skiing pillows anymore. And it was like the first run we tried to do pillow skiing, and it was kind of
some
like
of the same crew.
Yeah, it was Mac and Listy and Aaron Whitley, and same pretty much the same crew.
All right,
minus a couple, but yeah,
we're going home.
So so we like, okay, I guess we're just gonna ski like couloirs in the Alpine or whatever. You know, you just totally switch your plan, and because if you think about pillows, they are kind of all little micro cornices, and so it's kind of a deep winter type of a thing, right? As soon as there's any kind of spring type conditions, like those things get a little spicier, and it was just a little bit of it just reminded me of like, you know, how serious things can get in such like simple. I mean, it's not like simple terrain, like according to the avalanche textbooks, right? But like for a film crew to be in like little mini pillows, like little 10 to 15 foot drops, like we're not talking huge pillow stacks. We're talking about like routine, like small pillows for film crews. And for how serious I could have been had I not, like I was able to basically like straight line out the pillow field and it all kind of crumpled behind me. But the blocks that came down, like the size of small cars and stuff, you know, and had I been like stuffed under one of those things, it's like ice axe kind of block. Like, you wouldn't have been shoveling through that. You would have like needed.
It's wild, man. Like cornices are no joke. I remember like the horseshoes just on Whistler.
Yeah.
I remember cruising up to them one day. Like I've skied off them since I was 18 or whatever. I remember cruising over to one day. It was kind of a foggy day, and I was standing probably about 4 feet from the edge of it, because sometimes they're big and sometimes they're not that big. So and all of a sudden, crack! It fell from beneath my legs.
Yeah.
So I went down and I ended up just sitting, like legs hanging over the side. I ended up sitting on the edge, and I watched this minivan size block roll down through the thing, and I was like, "Oh my god!" And buddy dove over and pulled me back up, and I was like, "I'm done."
They're real, and they're always
that's inbounds in like a controlled zone.
And they'd
right?
probably hit that thing with a stick of dynamite how many times over the year, you know, like and how many people had stood right where you were all season, right?
Right.
But it's snow is a pretty crazy medium, right? Like it's constantly changing, and it's you think you know, and you only know as much as you can, but like there's a lot more at play than what you're in control of, right?
Because I know, like, obviously with your job, you've done a lot of training and research. You were with Lucy and Mac, are both guides now. You guys do that really awesome, like kind of pro
the
camp.
IPRW. It's
your camp at the beginning of the year with TGR.
Yeah, they do like a big, like pretty much the whole crew, and like the last 2 years has been a little bit different with COVID, but the whole crew will get together, like all the cinematographers, athletes, like production, everybody will get together, and you know, you're with like the groups that you're with through the winter, and you practice that stuff, and you do like all these crazy mock scenarios with multiple burials, and which is great. And a lot of crews are doing stuff similar. I think there's a lot of people who are taking the safety aspect of it serious, and you know, you have to, because there's no one else out there with you, you know, like unless you're at like a guided operation where a guide's telling you yes or no to this and that, like then maybe that you're slightly in their hands, but like typically you're unguided and you're under your own power, and whatever you bring with you in the backcountry is all you've got with you. And so being prepared and you know, knowing your weaknesses as far as like, okay, I'm pretty fast at transceiver searches, but maybe not as strong at like the first aid stuff, where it just allows everyone to work on stuff together. So
has it made you want to step up your game more, or go into search more information and more knowledge and more training?
I think it's kind of something that I'll always feel like I don't know enough, right? And I think that's a good approach to remain humble and to be like constantly wanting to know more and acquire more knowledge about it, because as soon as you think you're an expert, like there is no such thing as a snow expert, right? Like there's people who are highly trained and have like, you know, all the knowledge of mankind as far as snow assessment goes. They're not experts though. Like at the end of the day, you're just in the mountains, and like
you're
at the mercy of what's happening.
You're just trying to figure it out by the clues that have been given, and that's all they are, is clues. Right? It's not, you don't ever know all the facts, because if you knew all the facts, then that would make it a little better, but it really is just clues. You're like, okay, the temperature changed overnight, the sun is on this aspect, there's a tree here.
Crazy stuff happens sometimes, right? Like think about, I mean, like it might have been 2009, I want to say, or something here in Whistler, where there was a huge avalanche cycle, like the first, maybe 2008 even, first day that like didn't really freeze overnight, start of April maybe, and there was like a crazy avalanche cycle all over the whole resort, and like Heavenly Basin, or now it's Brownlee Basin maybe, but Heavenly Basin, like the mogul field that's underneath the Glacier Chair slid, like the road that goes to the Crystal Lodge from Glacier was like a 25-foot crown, and that mogul field slid basically to the ground.
I remember that.
And like all of Chainsaw Ridge slid, everything in Flute Bowl slid, like everything slid. And you're talking about like how many people had skied that run?
Thousands.
And how many patrollers had gone and blasted that run, and like
every time it snowed
all year,
yeah,
you know, and it slid to the ground. And like it's the kind of thing that just goes to show you that like snow's not there forever, you know. It's like being an ice climber a little bit. Like you're on a temporary medium that's not going to be the same tomorrow as it was yesterday. So you got to just be on your toes and make the best calls you can. So getting more knowledge is, you know, I think it's like a lifetime of acquiring the skills to just be safe out there and like still be able to push yourself, but in a safe way. And it's a fine line, but being able to have fun and you know, progress as a skier and push yourself has to be in balance with like being humble and knowing that like you're not in control and listening to the warning signs and stuff too, right? And which is why all of us who were there that day felt like it was really kind of just like an oddball thing. Like it was bad luck. And for sure, like
it's like a lightning strike, right?
Well, for sure I skied a piece of terrain that like the end of my run had to cross like a little bit of a gully, right? And then like there is like a lake there, so that's kind of a train trap, like for sure. Like we knew that going in, but like the way the snow was reacting that day and the stability and everything, like all of our assessments we feel pretty good about. But the one thing we didn't consider was like, well, what if like one giant pillow the size of like, you know, a Volkswagen Bug falls off and rolls down that gully and T-bones you, you know, like, and we didn't consider that. And that's just goes to show that you can always learn more and you take your lessons from it. And like the thing is that if I were there again under the same circumstances, like now I know to look a little bit closer for like that pillow that might be on like a hairpin trigger, but it's a complicated world,
right?
The backcountry.
The checklist is, there's the checklist that you can manage and that you're aware of things to check, and then there's the checklist that you have no idea is there that you can't look at.
There's such a thing as wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah.
Right? In nature, right? Like you could be having a picnic and a landslide happens, right? And like you get
yeah.
Like, there is such a thing.
Like that lady that was in Golden. Did you see that? The meteor went through her roof.
Oh yeah, I did.
And
see
landed
that,
on her bed pillow.
Wrong place, wrong time. In the universe, right? Lying in bed at night.
And a meteor goes through your door or through your ceiling and lands on the pillow beside your face.
Yeah. And for sure, skiing pillows in the backcountry is a higher risk endeavor than lying in your bed.
Getting hit by a meteor, yeah.
But like, it just goes to show that there is, you know, such a thing as wrong place, wrong time.
Right.
And it was like just one of those weird experiences that like will stick with us forever. Like we learned from it for sure, and hopefully other people can understand that. Like maybe they see the video and they understand something a little different about, you know, picking terrain and stuff. But at the end of the day, the main takeaway I think is to look at your gear and be confident that you've got something you can rely on.
Well, I'm gonna give you a cheers, man.
That was. Yeah, I think it's beer drinking hours.
Yeah, like we saw each other the other day, and I'm like, I'm gonna wait to ask him all these questions.
Yeah.
And like I said, like I didn't really want to like press you on it because I just knew you had so many people wanting to hear the story, and you had to deal with all the stuff.
It went pretty big, right? Like, and I think
massive.
I think it's good. I mean, it was in McLean's magazine. There was a big article there, and you know, there's interviews with Outside, and I've done a couple podcasts and stuff about it. And yeah, I mean, people are concerned about it, as they should be, right? Like, we're talking about something that, you know, the circulation of that device, it's like hundreds of thousands of those models out there. And I don't know how many they've had returned, but it's not hundreds of thousands. That's for sure. And I don't know how many of these plastic boxes that they need to be in for them to be safe to use have gone out, but it's not hundreds of thousands either. So yeah, there's still that risk of it happening to someone else. And I think the thing is, if it happened to someone else now, knowing what we know, the thing is that they've kind of done like the bare minimum to be able to say like, well, we warned you. Like, you didn't put it in the box. Yeah,
they've acknowledged it, but still, if it happens,
yeah, they've kind of done, you know, legally what they need to be able to say that like they took responsibility. Which
I don't know if that's even going to hold up though, right? Like they know it's a flaw, and if it like, well, how do the messaging didn't get to me?
Yeah, and right? Like who specifically that does fall on? You know, for sure, like Black Diamond, they acquired this brand. This device existed before they owned Pieps. But there's also like the testing people, right? Like the people who have the standards. Like,
Yeah.
Are they at fault for their standards being too low? Or, you know, if this kind of thing happens in like the automotive industry, it's not like
Isn't that
a
what
voluntary recall of your,
Well, isn't that what happened,
brake calipers or something, right? It's like, no, bring your car in. This is dangerous. And it's like recall.
Isn't that what happened? Like Fight Club. I remember Fight Club. Remember when they're on the airplane at the beginning and he's like, yeah, I work for a big automotive company and we assess the issues with this vehicle, and then we do a calculation to find out if it's going to cost us more if people die or if
it's
they
a real
don't,
thing,
right?
It's a real thing they do for sure. Like the amount of dollars that they'd have to pay out, like under the worst case in, you know, legal fees and all that payouts and stuff. Like they definitely compare that. I'm sure there's people who are sitting there and making financial sense of it, right? Without like a human factor, without having like a moral compass about it and saying like, well, we can't afford to have one of our customers die. It's more like,
How many can we afford to have die?
yeah, and I don't know that there's someone sitting there doing that at Black Diamond, but for sure that's something that people are doing in business, right? Like when there's an issue that might cost the company a lot of money, like, well, how expensive would it be to basically ignore the issue?
Yeah, where was everybody, like, was Black Diamond a partner of like the TGR and the shoot? Was everybody did everybody have the same transceiver?
No, we all pretty much had different transceivers, but yeah, we've all pretty much switched the Barry Vox now. And
Yeah.
I think Lucy already had a Barry Vox, and now we're all on board. And it's, you know, in my years of traveling to different CAT ski operations and heli ski operations and stuff, that's kind of the gold standard. It's the one that they like to use at all these operations because they are just they're easy to use for clients too, right? You can kind of put them in like a little bit more of a simple mode for a client. And then you have like access to more features as a guide, and they're, when they have a fleet, they like them all to be the same and everything, right? And so pretty much every operation I've been to uses them, and so I'd use them quite a bit, and I like them too. But like, you know, the thing with the Pieps transceiver is like it's had great technology in there, right? Like it's quite fast, and I liked it, but you know, I was oblivious to the flaw, and so I think there's people out there who like it, and you know, if you must use a Pieps transceiver, like they have a model with an updated switch that you can upgrade to, or at the very least like do this box upgrade, like get the new sleeve that it goes in.
Yeah. Would you like, so in light of all of these things that have happened and the things that you've learned specifically with, you know, your rescue and how you're training, you're sitting here because the training that you guys received, you know, did its job. And like you said, Mac is on his way to becoming a guide now. Lucy's a guide. Is that kind of something maybe you think you want to do moving forward, or is that something that you're interested in?
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see myself maybe going down that path. I'm not like really in a rush, but I think, you know, there's a lot of things that have to fall into place to become a guide. It's actually quite involved. So starting down that path, I think it's a matter of like just getting like the different certifications and experience and stuff, right? And so it's something that I think would be fun to do, and I'm really into rock climbing as well, and so like kind of combining that, like to become maybe eventually a mountain guide one day would be kind of a cool career path redirect. But I don't know, I'm not like totally convinced that's what I want to do, but I could see that being appealing to some level, and for sure it'd be like, I think you'd have good days and bad days, right? As soon as you're taking out people skiing that you've never met before and you don't know their experience levels and stuff, like it can really go either way. But I have fun skiing with people, and I've done some little things like with, you know, CMH. I did like some of that Steep Shots program that they put on.
Oh, did you?
Stuff. Yeah, I did a couple of those, and it was super fun. Like,
yeah,
you know, the crew that comes up, like they're from all over.
I'm trying to get on one of those.
Yeah, it's super fun.
They've been sponsoring the show for a bunch of years, and then the last 2 years, I was trying to get on a trip, but the last 2 years because of COVID, they didn't even run last year.
Yeah, I hadn't been the last 2 years either, but I did a couple in a row. The previous couple of years, and it was super fun because you get these guys from all over, right? From Japan or like Virginia. There was like repeat guys, and they're all like super fired up to ski Pillows in BC, and it's like their big ski week of the year, right? And they're like,
and they get to ski with Nick McNutt.
Well,
right?
and they're like quite high level clients, right? Like they want to push themselves. They don't want to just go ski like the Sunny Bowl, right? Like they want to hit some cliffs.
It's the high end. Is that
learn to backflip and stuff?
Was
right?
that at Galena?
I did it at Kootenay.
Yeah,
both times. Yeah,
I'm gonna call him up and be like, "Hey, let's get one that Nick's out. Let me get out for it. We'll do a podcast."
It's super fun because then they just like you're just kind of skiing with them, right? Like for sure you're going slow because you're like watching each other hit cliffs and stuff. But like it's kind of like skiing with your friends on like a slow pow day when you're like stopping and watching each other.
Yeah, it's like a camp. It's like a
like
camp, right? There's a handful of camps where you go and they've got the I know Rachel Findler with the You Thrive camps that I went out with Johnny.
Yeah.
In France a couple of years, and it was they got the lodge, they had the breakfast lunches or the breakfast and dinners. They got transportation to and from the hill. And then they usually have a guide, and then you ski with a ski pro or whatever, right? And then you ski lines, and you just basically cruise around the resort and be like, oh, well, why don't we try this? Or they can ask you, or they can watch you ski something, or you can.
And they learn little tricks, like they all want to like be better skiers in pillows and stuff, right? Like that's why they're there. They want to go to CMH, like they want to ski in BC because they see the videos and they're like, that looks super fun. And then they get in that terrain and they're like, okay, this is pretty real, and like they've got someone to kind of help coach them through it, and like, okay, you're a little too back seat, or maybe try and be a little bit like more sideways when you land on the pillows and ditch some speed or whatever. Like just little tweaks can make a huge difference.
And it's important. It's important for them as well because they realize that these people that they watch, these heroes, ski heroes over there, they're like, oh, this is a cool guy. He's just a regular nice human being.
They're all just regular people. They love skiing, right? Like all these pro skiers, I know pretty much everyone in the industry, it feels like, and they're all just super stoked skiers, right? Like that's why they are where they are. And so
you I know you're a big climber, and you mentioned that as well, and you were showing us your thing. So what happened to the arm? Go like a quick kind of like from you shattered it, you into the hospital, then what happened with your arm? I
had like a bunch of breaks in these two bones, ulna radius, and ulna especially. Like I got my arm up, so I hit the tree here, so both those bones shattered, especially the ulna, and I had surgery like the following day, and I was in the hospital for a few days, and they were worried about compartment syndrome and stuff, even because it was so swollen, like it was the size of like my thigh. It was crazy to see how big my forearm got. It was bad, and I was on like IV morphine painkiller and stuff, and it was still pretty
Were you
bad.
on the button?
No, but it was like I had like oral pills and like 2 different drugs on the IV like for days and days. But yeah, they had to pull traction, get my wrist like back where it was supposed to be. That it's surgery, and because it was like the bone, like the ulna was so smashed up, they ended up removing quite a few little fragments and stuff. But it was so swollen and just like anyway, the first surgery didn't go perfectly, I guess. Like at 6 months.
And is that the reconstruction of it?
Yeah, like so the radius healed quite well, but the ulna, I guess like there was a little bit too much space between like the live ends of the bone. Like I think some of the bone had been so damaged that it was not fusing back together. So, and I was rock climbing and stuff, and like, it took like for sure a few months, but by 3 months or something, I was doing some rock climbing, and like it didn't really feel like right, but it was a major injury and stuff, and
it pins and stuff.
I kind of went with it. Yeah, I went with it, and like I was even mountain biking and stuff a bit. And then at 6 months, I had like my kind of follow-up x-rays again, and it was still just not healed. Like the radius had healed well, but the ulna hadn't, and I was fully relying on the hardware. And some of the screws had even started to kind of back out of the bone a little bit and stuff.
Is that from a lot of the climbing and stuff? Probably
just from life, from doing whatever. Like I was doing stuff constantly, and I've been like developing new climbing routes and stuff. So it's kind of like vertical laboring, like whatever. And so, I got the notice basically at 6 months that like, hey, we're gonna have to talk about another surgery. At that point, what they have to do is a bone graft because the bone isn't gonna heal on its own. So in October last year, like pretty much a year ago now, I had a bone graft, and so I did some research, and it sounded like they usually do the iliac crest, so they'll take like a chunk out of your hip, pretty much.
Yeah. They just like chisel it off with like
I think they basically cut like a little piece out,
or
a fairly significant piece actually, because they needed quite a bit of bone, and it's not a very thick bone, your hip, like there's not actually that much useful material there, so they got to take a piece.
And is that just that's like the least obtrusive, or the?
Well, I was doing the research. It was kind of like sounded horrible. Like it sounded like something I did not want to happen. Right, like a hip surgery, like in October, right before winter. So, and then they end up having to put hardware in there and stuff. So, I tried to opt for like a cadaver, and then I got convinced that there was this kind of newer technology that they had access to that's like it's called RIA. It's like reamer irrigator aspirator. So they have this drill bit basically. So they went in through like my glute, so they cut open kind of your ass cheek, and they go in and they drill a hole into your hip, and then they can like redirect, and they drill like a pencil lead kind of a few millimeters size hole, like from your hip to your knee. Like they take a core sample of your femur basically.
Ooh.
So they did a femur bone graft, and so that ended up going super
So it's
well.
like that long?
Well, I think it comes out as like pulp, and then they kind of repack it in there, and so
they just like
yeah,
it's just like
they took the
Bondo
plate,
for like
I
fixing a
guess.
car. They just like fill in the putty, and then it just hopefully
yeah, and then so they took the plate out that was there, and they put a bigger plate in there, and then that ended up going really well. So it healed up quite well. So I was skiing, in started December, and I was able to, like, it was a bit weird snowmobiling at the start of the year, like in January when I started to snowmobile, like on the icy whoops,
is that your...
Oh, it just, yeah, like it's
Do you
kind
have
of
a,
a beat
do you have a finger
down.
throttle or a...
I have thumb, but just like the handlebars, like kind of doing this, and like lifting it when you get stuck and whatever.
Yeah.
It bugged me a little bit, but eventually it was okay. And then, yeah, this summer I was, back to climbing and stuff again. And I had to recover from the femur surgery a little bit as well, but that was relatively quick because there was no hardware left or anything. And it was such a small diameter hole that they ended up having pretty good heal time. So
Right.
it was like a few weeks before I was hiking, like going up to Chief every day and whatever. So, and then, yeah, I had, a pretty good season of climbing and biking and stuff after winter. And meanwhile, in the back of my head, it was like, this metal is just too much. So I had like 14 screws, I think, in there, and 2 big plates, and just like the range of motion stuff didn't feel like it was quite there. And I had like some muscle atrophy in my chest and shoulder a little bit because like I wasn't getting that kind of like last bit of the range, and I could just tell it was causing me issues. And my elbow was cracking all the time, and
Get it out, man.
so I got it out. Yeah, I got it out like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's like I can't
Yeah.
stop. And it's on both sides. It's
Yeah,
so
I've got
gnarly.
Crazy.
I was just saying, you should have postponed 2 weeks and kept it for Halloween.
Yeah, I had like pretty good luck actually getting a date that seemed to work super well for, like I still was able to enjoy my summer right up until I had it on the 4th of
And with
October.
COVID too, like they had canceled a lot of like
elective surgery.
surgeries,
yeah.
right?
And I also like the surgeon who did it. She did all 3 of the surgeries, but she did it in Squamish, so I didn't have to go to the city at all, which was
Perfect.
pretty nice. And so it kind of was like perfect timing where I got to still have like a full summer of climbing and biking and whatever. And then I have, quite a bit of lead time up until winter. So like by the time the lifts are turning, I'm not even going to be thinking about it, I don't think. And I mean, I'm already at the point now, like 2 weeks later, where I feel like as soon as these staples come out, I'm going to be able to start using it pretty normally. So
Sweet.
I just can't impact it because there's 14 holes or whatever in the bone.
Yeah, he's
at the
gonna
moment. But
those got to fill in.
yeah,
right?
and the
He's gonna
soft
fill in.
tissue, like definitely for sure, it's bruised. and
Maybe I
sore
shouldn't
a
have given you
little
that beer.
bit. No, it's fine. That's probably good for me.
Whenever
one or two. Here and there.
Yeah, whenever I injure myself, I just cut everything out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I definitely.
Are you a
took
milk drinker?
some
Does that actually? Do you think that
time.
works?
No, I don't drink milk. But I've been taking like calcium pills and stuff.
Right. And like magnesium and stuff like that.
Yeah, I have like they're like bone health, like pills that have like the whole umbrella of vitamins that you would ever need for bone growth and stuff. So
Right.
that my mom has nicely got for me. So
Right on.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mom.
yeah.
So I guess last night was the TGR premiere, Stoke the Fire premiere here in Whistler.
Yeah.
And how did your season go last year with the filming and whatnot? With all of the things that we just spoke about.
Yeah. It was a bit of a weird season just with not being able to leave BC really, and then coming off the injury. Well, coming off the mental component plus like the femur surgery and stuff in the fall. And so it was like I started skiing a little bit late, and I had a little bit of like in the back of my mind just a little bit of hesitance with like bigger terrain kind of. And also, the snowpack was weird this year. Like as we all know, it was a strange year to be in the Alpine and bigger stuff. And so I played it pretty safe, honestly.
It's kind of a year where you're like, you don't really mind just taking it easy.
Yeah.
All these things, you're like, I'm going to ski this year and we'll get some stuff, but I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not going for it. I'm just going to be.
I still had some days that I thought were like super, super fun. And, I got to ski a lot with like Sammy Carlson and Dane Tudor. That was like mostly who I was filming with this winter. And then I did a trip to Micah with Mac and Lusty, kind of to finish the season off. And then I was getting really excited to just do spring skiing here locally. And then, it didn't end up happening.
Shut down again.
Yeah, but so it was a little bit of a weird year, but I still had a blast. And like I think, for me, it felt like a success to be able to just get out skiing in front of the cameras again and be in that terrain and, do some tricks again and start to kind of build back up. And I think like having no more metal in my arm and coming off of like a bit of a lighter year for me. I think like I have way more motivation than ever this year to try and ski hard, and so I'm just fingers crossed that it dumps right away, and I'm kind of just like,
hopefully this weather pattern we've been getting stays all winter. Just
a couple degrees colder, and
storm
we're
after storm after storm. Do you have any specific trips planned, or any things that you're looking forward to for this winter?
Nothing yet. Like I'm gonna be doing the TGR stuff for sure again, but it's kind of like always relatively last minute with those guys. They like to try and capitalize on the good conditions, right? So we always have some like theoretical plans, and then it's like usually you get curveballs thrown with weather, and you go wherever else. And it also depends too on travel restrictions and things.
I wonder if Japan is going to open.
I have my doubts about Japan.
If they're ready for the floodgates. I was talking to my friend Jackie, who's a guide. He's an apprentice guide, and he's a filmer. He does a lot of work with Armada and stuff. He was actually on the podcast a bunch of years ago when I did that Japan series. And I was chatting with him the other day, and he's like, "Oh, I'm getting so stoked for winter, man." And I was like, there's no gaijins. He's like, yeah, all the powder's left for us.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's great.
Yeah. I mean, we don't really have that here, do we? Everyone's got an Epic Pass.
Goodness.
Everyone and their sister's got one, and then they've got the border open now. So I think
that's a podcast that I don't really want to have.
Yeah.
I'm going to let everybody else have that discussion, have that argument. Like, if you go on Twitter, it's just brutal. But I have my opinions, but I haven't made a real solid point of forming them specifically.
I think there's good things and bad things about having access to a cheaper pass,
right?
Allow you to ski more places, and the good and bad are obvious, right? Like more people have access to skiing probably because you're not limited to these like insane day tickets. You can, for the price of 4-day tickets or 5-day tickets, you buy a pass. And you can go all year, and then the only downside is like
the highways and the lift lines and
it's just more people,
right?
And more people are getting into backcountry skiing, so the easy, close to home kind of backcountry hits are getting busy,
and it's kind of sketchy because
people are skiing on top of each other,
and people are doing sketchy shit, man. Like I remember, what is it, a year or two ago? I was coming out of Spanky's out of Ruby Bowl and the High Traverse. And I look over it, it was like March. It was sunny. There's like two dudes zigzagging up the poop chutes.
Just like skinning up
a zigzag right up the avalanche path at like 2:00 in the afternoon in March on a sunny day after a POW day. And I'm just like, oh no. Like, they're out of earshot. What do I do? Or do I just take off so I don't have to deal with it? Do you know what I mean? You're like, there's nothing I can do.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people who are over their heads pretty quick, right? Like the backcountry is real. As soon as you walk out of those gates, like you are on your own. Even if it seems like there's 1,000 other people taking that same skin track, like you go out to Blackcomb and you start going up the spearhead, and it's like feels in bounds because there's so many people, but like you're on your own.
When you're cruising around back to like Isumi or Coronable, and there's like a skin track, and then there's that sometimes people get a little too low and there's down below. Like I've seen someone just above release and like take someone out of that lower track and just like, oh god, like don't.
Oh, even like in Lakeside Bowl and stuff, right? People have multiple elevations of traverses and knock each other over.
It's sketchy. And then there's that feeling like, oh, I'm in bounds. I just skied here from the resort. It's fine, right? And then there's a lot of people that have done maybe an AST1 and they've got this false sense of confidence. Like I find that's what a lot of people that's the two responses I get from people from like their AST1 or 2s. Is A, it either scares the crap out of you.
Yeah, which it should. That's the general response.
You realize what you don't know, or you're like, okay, sweet, I know what I'm doing now. Let's go. I'm
qualified.
Certified. Yeah, right.
Yeah, if you take an AST1 and you're not like more aware of the dangers, you're doing it wrong, right? Like, you're not like just because you've attended a 3-day course doesn't mean that you shouldn't be afraid anymore of backcountry. I think it's a real place. And
it's a real place. Yeah.
No one's out there making sure that you're okay. It's like you're on your own.
Absolutely. Are you doing any of the tour stops other than the Whistler stop?
There's some shows in Vancouver this weekend coming up.
Oh, that's right. So, yeah. We've got
Thursday, Friday.
We've got the IF3 festival in Whistler this weekend as well.
Yeah, and then Saturday. So we'll see.
Are you coming up for the award show?
Yeah, I'll come up.
Yeah, nice. Awesome. Should be a good time.
Yeah.
It's that time of year. Did you care about not going down to the States for their big tour? I know a lot of
it would have been fun. Like I definitely felt I was really on the cusp of going, but it felt like
and you got that going on too.
Yeah, and I had that surgery lined up and stuff, so I didn't really I was kind of using that like last little bit of September to just like enjoy myself and play and
keep it at the kind of the end of that mellow year, and then next year.
Yeah, it was just I would have preferred to drive down and kind of make like a bit of a trip out of it and stuff. And
You couldn't do that yet.
Yeah, and the border wasn't open and everything, and so yeah, I think I miss all those guys. I haven't seen tons of those guys in 2 years basically. So
Right.
I felt like a big pull to go, but I also at the same time was just kind of like it didn't seem like quite the right timing yet. So I'm really excited to go next year. I think.
I'm hoping Baker's calling my name this year.
Yeah,
I want to do
everywhere. I feel like skiing in BC only for the last 2 years has been great on one hand, but also like I miss going other places.
Right,
too.
people are like, "Oh no, you're tired of skiing in BC."
Yeah, I mean you'll never get tired of skiing in BC,
No.
but like variety is nice.
For a place to get stuck, this is probably the best place in the world to get
there was
stuck.
no complaints about like not being able to leave during all of what's been happening,
Right.
but I think being able to switch it up if you want to is nice, and so we'll see. I think this winter I'll probably end up trying to go somewhere else.
I haven't seen a lot of the movies. I have like most of the movies on a hard drive just through the I3 festival.
Yeah.
I haven't really watched them yet. And then I've been talking about the last year during COVID is like, let's see where all of these local edits, you know what I mean? Like, let's see who wins.
Yeah,
Like there's like
everyone's
BC,
skiing at home.
BC versus Utah versus Colorado versus,
Yeah.
wherever, right? I want to see if that's actually a thing.
Yeah, I think it seemed like some crews were really getting it.
Like the Blank guys, I actually saw their movie. Yeah, it's really good.
I haven't seen it yet,
Tales
but I've
from-
heard. I mean,
Tales
those
from
guys,
Cascadia.
Stog and Alexei, and like they ended up nailing their conditions pretty much all year, which is awesome because it's tricky. Like sometimes you've got plans and you just like kind of should have been there yesterday. Like that's
Right.
That's the mentality. And I've been on trips where we should have been here last week, and so when it all comes together and you're in the right place at the right time, and like it keeps happening. Like,
That's one of my
pretty
ultimate
satisfying.
goals, right? Like, so I've always worked another job doing this, right? So this is the first winter that this is it. I'm a podcaster now,
Yeah.
right? I'm not serving tables
That's
anymore.
sweet.
Yeah, right. Finally, it was kind of it was something I was ready for, and then something I was gifted. I'll use that as the term. I was gifted not having a job.
It's a nice gift.
Yeah, it was because that place sucked. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
But so, like I said, it was already in my head. So I'm like, oh, cool. It's just kind of that push in the right direction. But my dream has always been to be that, like, all right, I'm going to pick 2 weeks this year. I'm going to give myself a budget. I'm going to see where in the world the snow is.
Don't buy your ticket until like
And then go
the week before, or
right? So
whatever,
that's
yeah.
I don't know if I'm financially able to do that just quite yet this year.
Yeah.
But I'd like to. I think that's kind of a
It's the only downside with being kind of last minute is usually the flights are way more expensive than if you plan it in advance.
Yeah,
But
right, like-
in my experience, like planning things in advance is so hard. Even like I did some of those contests in Europe, like the Red Bull line catcher and stuff a couple times, and like they pick their window, and they have like a week that they pick in February or whatever, and
same thing with the
you hope that it's going to be good, or the World Tour,
free ride world tour.
totally.
Yeah, same thing.
Like it's really hard to pull that stuff off, right? Because
Right.
you've got kind of your finite amount of time, and you've nailed it down so far in advance, and then like
And you got to figure out like how much. All right, so
it's
a
more likely for it to not be good.
a last minute trip anywhere is going to be, let's say, $2,000 for the ticket. Then you got to figure out where you're going to stay. Hopefully, fortunately, it's in a place where you know somebody and you can get hooked
Or
up.
if not, hopefully there's some availability. Right?
Exactly right. So I don't know. That's one of my dreams is trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll figure out. Maybe I'll connect with the airline or something like that.
Yeah,
Be like,
be
hey,
nice.
I've got this idea. I'll see if I can find somebody.
And pitch it to Air Canada and see if you can get it.
Yeah, right. Get a couple big name athletes. I'll give you a call
Yeah,
on
let me
board
know.
and be like,
Let me know.
hey, clear out your schedule from this week to this week, like this week or this 10-day block. We'll see what we can do. We'll turn it into a thing. But like I know with you guys, it's kind of similar though. Like you kind of do that.
Yeah.
Like I said, I was talking to Jordy in the first episode of the season here, and he's like, I had no plans last year, and I was at home for a week.
Yeah.
Right, just things pop up as long
Yeah.
as you're flexible and.
I mean, we're lucky, like in BC, right? You get in the car and it's like a different world on the other side of the province. It might be raining on the coast and it might be really good in the interior. Or like the wind might have hammered the interior and the coast is firing. So it's nice to have, we do have a lot of options and variety just in BC, which is pretty nice to have in the back seat. But it's always nice to switch it up and go somewhere else once in a while. And I feel like I've been kind of content with,
where are you craving? If someone's like, all right, Nick, where are you going?
I mean, it must
if
have
it's good everywhere in the world, if
Yeah.
for some crazy reason every best place in the world right now is turned on.
Yeah.
And you have to choose one spot to go, hey, we're flying out tomorrow. Your call.
I think Europe.
Yeah?
I think, somewhere. Like, it's been a couple of years since I've been over there, right?
Where exactly?
I don't know. Austria's amazing. Italy. Like, somewhere. France.
I'd like to go check out Engelberg.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of good things. There's a lodge there, Engelberg Titleist, I think.
Yeah.
And they've done a really, really good job with, I guess, their social accounts, but Oscar Enender goes and takes photos, and Julian Carr's been there, and Hedvig Vessel, and I think the Free Red World Tour guys have been there. But every time I see it, I'm like, wow, they got good snow. The terrain is badass. So I'd say that's on one of my lists.
I mean, Europe's incredible just for the ski culture component, right? Like, it's such a lifestyle there. It's so ingrained in just their livelihood.
Right.
And, I haven't really had, like, amazing conditions on a Europe trip ever. Like, I've been over there a few times and just, like, it's been all right.
We got lucky with...
I've seen the potential. Like, I've been there and been like, man, this place would be unreal with a fat snowpack and, like, deep pow, but it never materialized, like, that well. I actually, like, on one of those... the line catcher trips I went to, we were skiing at Val d'Isère, and we had like Leo Telfer it was like an off day for the comp, and so he was like showing us all his little spots. Like the whole crew it was so fun having like 15 riders from the contest all just following him around the home mountain, and like it was actually quite good conditions too.
Yeah.
Like
just session the mountain, just destroy it.
Which was so much fun. and I went to Austria I think the following year maybe. And it was earlier in the season, kind of like I think it was early January maybe, but it was a little shallow, but it was a pow day. Like you're kind of bottoming out.
Their window is a lot shorter, right? Like they open so early in some of those spots, but it isn't really good unless you're way up in the Alpine until a little bit later. And then their spring is like really spring earlier, like way earlier.
Yeah, I don't think you want to go try and like do a powder trip to Europe in April, right?
Or in March.
March, maybe, yeah.
No, you can't even March, I don't think.
I mean, even March here, like, man, it gets warm now. So it seems like, March used to be bread and butter for filming, but now if you don't have some stuff done by February, like, you might be kind of risking it. Mm-hmm. And the high alpine, for sure, some of the bigger ski mountaineering type stuff, like, spring is the time to do it. But for skiing powder, like, March can go either way, it seems like.
It's true.
We're having a little bit less consistently cold temps, People are out mountain biking in March. Seems like it's kind of scary.
Well, at least we live in a good place where there's always an option, right?
Well, I'm loving Squamish for that because it's like if the ski hill's hard pack, like when we get that kind of high pressure and it's like the wind and whatever got warm and windy, and so the ski hill is just icy and like you're not motivated to go up. Like you can just go to the smoke bluffs and do a few pitches in the sun and south facing wall, or like go mountain biking, and it's kind of endless spring.
Have a nice little break.
Yeah, like hang out in a t-shirt and like switch it up, take a day off from ski boots and jam your feet in the rock shoes instead of changing. Yeah.
Right on, man. Well, thanks for coming by. I appreciate it.
Yeah, cheers.
What you got? Any final words? Things people should pay attention to or listen to or think about, other than what we talked about?
I mean, it's that time of year where it's worth like taking a look at all your equipment, right? Mm-hmm. Like, not just your skis and bindings and stuff, but making sure that you got like your, like I found some little hairline fractures in my girlfriend's shovel or whatever, or in her probe actually. And it just goes to show that like you got to pay close attention to all that stuff. So check all your equipment out.
Yeah. And
with like a fine tooth comb, like really look at it. 'Cause like you don't want that stuff to snap right when you need it.
It's a good point. 'Cause I remember I was talking to someone the other day who hadn't really done an ASD course or any planning. I'm like, when's the last time you actually assembled your probe?
Yeah.
Like
those things don't last forever.
Some people have that stuff and they just sit in a bag.
Yeah.
And like, when's the actual last time you actually put everything together? Like, say you got a bunch of leaves in the background. They say to do like tests and planning and stuff like that in the fall. You don't necessarily have to have snow on the ground. Oh no. Right? Just go like, if you got leaves in the background, just get a piece of cardboard and tape your transceiver to the cardboard, and do it that way. Or like go to the beach and bury it in a just put a piece of cardboard and put your transceiver in a plastic bag or something, like have a little fun with it, run around. Yeah. Even in a soccer field, even if you can see the device, like just ignore that it's there and just use your transceiver to find it. Like, just because you can see it doesn't mean like, you can't still learn how it works. Practice. Hone your skills. Practice and just like making sure your equipment's in good order, right? You could combine it with like a workout too, but like do like a transceiver, like a 2 transceiver search, and every time you find one, you got to do like 20 squats. Yeah, something like that. do before you can go find the next one. Yeah, and plus, like, I mean, that stuff's in really high demand these days. I feel like it's kind of like
everything, mountain bike gear, ski gear, everything's in pretty high demand. So like, if you're in need of a new probe or whatever, because you found like, the weak points of those things are the cables where they kink every time when you fold them up, or like where they go together, sometimes they get cracked. Like
if they're banging around in your backpack all the time.
If you're in a position where, totally. Like my girlfriend has never used her probe for real, but it was cracked probably from just sitting in her backpack or whatever. And if you feel like you're in need of some new stuff, like get on it while you can, because it might be out of stock, might be harder to find later. Who knows? Mm-hmm. It's a world where the supply chain's kind of been crunched, so it's worth making sure you got that stuff now.
There you go. Wise words from the guy who knows.
Yeah.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, play safe out there.
Appreciate you coming by.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we could finally have a little chat about it. And
yeah.
I'm glad you're doing well, even though that arm looks gnarly. Although it's a cool story.
Yeah,
right?
the saga I feel like is coming to an end finally.
You think that's the last of it?
Yeah, now it's just like getting the strength back.
Are you doing like the hockey stick?
Oh, like rolling up a weight or whatever.
Yeah, you're rolling up a weight on.
I haven't been doing a ton yet with it. Mostly just range of motion.
Yeah.
Like I can lift stuff with it and whatever, but I haven't been pushing it. I'm just these staples are kind of like.
Last question. So the wrist you said was like down here. It was still all intact. It was just because of these bones were shortened. It just pulled it back. Kind of thing?
Totally. Like this, my wrist was like maybe 2 inches back from where it was supposed to be, and my arm was like.
So the wrist itself,
mangled.
You didn't really lose any function or mobility. It just was. It was just on vacation in a different part of your body.
Yeah, I mean, like I couldn't do anything until like they pulled traction and did surgery and all that. But it was. I got super lucky that it works. Like I have a functioning arm, and it was pretty broken. So
there you go, man.
Pretty glad that it's and then getting the metal out was elective, but I feel like it was for the best for long term. So
good call. Right on, man. Well, I'm stoked to see that movie this year. I haven't watched it yet, and I'm stoked to see what's going on in the future. Yeah, I think we need to get on a call with CMH and
yeah. Anytime those guys call, I'm always happy.
Right, yeah, I'm in
for a visit.
Yeah. Hey, what's good? What time?
They've got more terrain than anyone, right? And they're some of their tenures or some of the
like,
the prime
Hey Nick, it's John from CMH. Hey, cool. When, what time and where?
Yeah. Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Hopefully, I think now like all the heli operations and stuff are all kind of going to be running back up.
Yeah.
Slightly more normal with like because pretty much no one has.
Dude, I'm stoked for them. They spent they didn't operate last year. They were shut down for.
Their clientele is almost all international. Like hardly any Canadians actually go do.
They got a lot of U.S. and like overseas. Like they were gonna do like Canada only trips last winter, but unfortunately they weren't able to, and they lost the year before. And then a lot of the people that had bought tickets were like, yeah, cool, just move it forward. Yeah. So they weathered the storm really well, and for all the people that work for them. I'm really glad they're getting back to work because they had a lot of like obviously people like us, right? Like mountain people, guides and cooks and like everyone I've ever met that worked at a CMH, whether I was there I went for like a summer adventure, which is pretty cool. But obviously there's like half of Revelstoke works for CMH. But every time I've met anybody, they're all just really awesome, cool people. So I'm really stoked that they get back to work and do what they want to do.
Yeah, I think a lot of those operations were having a hard time keeping people happy. Working right, like it was tough, and I know like Micah was open just barely, kind of, like they had people coming, but they were just trying to keep their staff working a bit, right? Make sure that they had some income stream, and because shutting down would have been financially probably the smartest thing to do, but like they wanted to keep their staff employed, which is a nice move on their part, right? Trying to keep things going, keep people
exactly. Well, right on. Let's go. Get people some work.
Yeah, totally.
All right, cheers, buddy. Thanks.
Cheers. Thanks again.
You've been listening to the Low Pressure Podcast, the podcast for skiers. This has been a Redmark Media production.